Hello everyone. In this session, I would like to discuss about how many ways we can bind the data in Angular application. There has four ways are there. One is like string interpolation. Another one is like property binding. The next one is like event binding. The next one is like two-way data binding. First, let's start with string interpolation. String interpolation is like one type of one-way data binding. Means we can bind the data from my component to view. So programmatically, I want to explain this string interpolation. For that, first create an Angular application. I created this Angular application by using Angular CLI. I run this application by using ngServe. Once you run this application, that application is going to run on one of the port number called as a localhost 4200. So first time it looks like the data is visible to the end user is like a searching. So which data, where this data from where it is coming means my bootstrap component. If you observe in the app module, my bootstrap component is like a app component. So this is my app component. My template URL for this component is like app component.html. From that, where whatever the data is there, that data is visible to the end user. But this data I don't want to hard code like this. I want to bind the data by using string interpolation. So the string interpolation, as I said in the past, it's like a one-way data binding. The data is binding from component to view. So inside my component, first of all, take some data variable. My data variable is like a name whose type is like a string and my whose value is like a Sachin. This string data I want to bind inside my view. So how we can bind them? How we can bind this value means by using string interpolation. So how my interpolation syntactical looks like means it is set of curly braces. Just you can put like braces in between. Where is my data? That data variable. Where is my data? That data is inside my component. That data is going to hold with my variable called as a name. That name you can mention here. This is the way my interpolation is going to work. Now say this my session is going to display it here. If you want to check it's really changed or not, for example, the value is like Dhoni. Now come here, my Dhoni should be displayed here. So the interpolation is like a one-way data binding. The data is going from component to your view. How we can bind means by using a set of curly braces. This is my string interpolation. The next one is like a property binding. Property binding is also one way data binding only. The data is going from my component to view, but my property is nothing but it is inside an element. It's a key value pair. So how syntactically my property binding is looks like means my property binding is my property key is always enclosed with a square bracket, and then here you can put like your value reference variable name. So programmatically I want to show that one. Okay, let's start. I have one image is there, image tag is there. I want to display one image here, one image here. My image width is like simply it's like 100 pixel. It's like 100 pixel. Now the image is inside my assets folder, my image name like sachin.jpg. So that first of all mention that path. Take one image path variable whose type is like a string, and my image path is like inside the assets. My image name is like sachin.jpg. Now you can use this image path here, but this image path I want to bind like a property binding. Okay, to which property you want me to bind that particular value, that property should be enclosed with a square bracket. Now it should work, it should work. Now if you come here, now say this, my image displayed. Now not only by using property binding, by using interpolation also we can do that. Interpolation is like always my variable value is enclosed with what? Okay, my variable value I can get it by using a set of curly braces. Now it's also it's going to work. Now say this, it should display like two such images. One is, yeah, one is like property binding, another one is like interpolation. Now the difference between when the difference like when you can go with the interpolation and when you can go with the property binding. For that purpose I want to explain one simple example. Let's take one button. Let's take one button. My button is like a submit button. Okay, submit button. Let's take one more button also. Let's take one more button also. Okay, here there has one disabled property is there. Disabled property is there. Property used for, okay, you can manage the button like enable or disable. Now this value I can get from the component. So the value is like what is disabled. Disabled is like disabled is like a boolean value, is like a boolean value. By default the value is like a true. By default the value is like a true. So that by using property binding I want to bind that value. What is my value? Is disabled value. My is the disabled value is like a true, so you are telling like disabled true, so disable that button. Now the same value I want to use by using interpolation. The same value you can bind it here. So the both buttons should be disabled. Now if you observe here, the both buttons should be disabled. Yes, working as expected. Working as expected. For example, if you made the change here, if you made the change here, okay, true to false, then the time both buttons should be enabled. But if you come here, one button, okay, see this, one button is enabled, but one button is like disabled. Which button is enabled? First button. First button we used like what? We binded the value like what? Property binding or not, but my interpolation binding is not work for this particular disabled property or not. So when you can go with the interpolation, when you can go with the property binding means whenever the expression is nothing but left side value and right side value. Right side value we can say like a expression value. Whenever the expression value is like a string, then you can go with the interpolation. Then you can go with the interpolation. Whenever the expression value is like a non-string, now true false, it's not a string, then you can go with the property binding. This is the main difference between okay interpolation and my property binding. When you can go with the interpolation, then you can go with the property binding. Hope you got some idea. The next one, the next binding is like event binding. Means whenever you trigger an event, okay, based on that event I want to bind some value. I want to bind some value. For that purpose, just I want to take one button. I want to take one button here. Button here, change value is my button. Now at the time of clicking on the button, just you can take like event function click is my handler. Function click is my handler. So first of all define this method in your component. So can you go to my component, and this is my component. You can define the method. At the time of clicking on this particular button, I want to bind the new value here. At the time of clicking on the button, I want to change this Dhoni value to Sachin. So how we can means, just you can go to your button click handler. Here you can write like this dot name equals to, just you can change Dhoni to Sachin. This is the way by using events you can change the values, and the values you can bind here. Now see this, that Sachin changed or not. This is the way you can bind the values by using events. The next one is like two-way binding. Two-way binding. Two-way binding is nothing but event binding also. It's like one-way binding only. Two-way binding is nothing but this is like my component to view, we can bind the data, as well as my view to component also we can get the data. We can get the data. The best example for two-way binding is just you can take one text box. Now come here, okay, just you can take one para. Okay, I want in the next line, but the reason I'm taking like one text box here. Inside the text box, if you want to take the values, just you can take the value. You can put the value. You can put the value. Okay, this is like a normal HTML like this. If you put the value inside the text box, you can see yes, yes, yes. But if you want to set the value in Angular, there has one directive is there. The directive name is like a ng model is the directive. By using ng model directive, we can handle the two-way binding. Means we can bind the data from my component to view as well as view to component also. So that just let's you can do it. Ng model is my ng model is my directive name. So here you can say like player name is my variable name. Whenever you bind one variable with my predefined directive, that particular name should be, that particular name should have to define in your component. So that just you can define your component here. You can define your component here. My player name, now come here, this is my player name whose value is like a string. Okay, here you can put like my player name, you can say like a Sachin. Now if you come here, it gives me some error. So can you go to my console, can you check that one? Ng model, since it's not a known property, Whenever you use this directive can understand by the one of the module called as a forms module. So that first of all, you have to include that forms module in your root module. My root module is like a app module. Here you have to include that one. So first of all, import that module. This module like a forms module which is coming from at the red Angular forms library. My module name is like a forms module. This module, in which section you have to include, means the import section you have to include it. Now my ng model can be recognized. Now can I refresh my page? It should work now at least. Now say this, my section is displayed or not. My section is displayed or not. Now if we made any changes, this particular data we can take. This particular data we can take into our controller. If you want to check it, is it really I can take inside the controller? Okay, simple. Inside this button only. Inside this button click only. Just you can print your value. My console.log off, my console.log off. Okay, from here itself, okay, instead of Sachin, just I want to print my player name. I want to print my player name. First of all, my player name is like a Sachin. That means what? You are binding the value from my component to view. Component to view. So that inside my view, first time my input contains what? Sachin. This is only the proof. First time my value contains what? Sachin. Now, if you made any changes here, now I can get the value into my component, and again that value I pass it to whom? Pass it to my view or not. That means here at the time of clicking on the button, I can get the value into my component or not. So means I have the data inside my view, I get the data into my component. After that, based on my requirement, I assign this data to my variable. That is next one. So first time you bind the data from my component to view, this Sachin, go to my view, and then if you made any changes, this data I can get from a view to component or not. This is one type of two-way binding, component to view and view to component or not. These are the four ways in Angular we can bind the data. Thanks guys, thanks for watching.